Welcome to the 918 and 919 Pixelmon Showcase, hosted by me, Pixel Snacks. Pixelmon has released 2 Halloween updates in quick succession with tons of new features and changes, so let's just get started. Alright, some small changes first, of course. There's a config setting for the shiny charm now, so you can crank up how much it affects the spawn rate. Hammers have had their block breaking speed standardized to be 4 times slower than normal tools, instead of varying amounts. Pokemon that are unbattleable or uncatchable or have another type of property will have that display under their nameplate. Healer blocks are no longer a full block, so things such as glass panes will no longer connect to them. And Empoleon will now drop a trident instead of a metal coat. Moving on to some of the smaller new features, starting off with new stuff for battles. Pokemon battles will now try to reflect the environment of Minecraft, which means if you start a battle while it is raining in Minecraft, the battle will also have rainy weather conditions. The sunny weather condition will apply if you're in a hot environment, such as a desert or jungle during the day, and of course, the battle will have snow if it's snowing outside. You can even get hail to appear if one Pokemon stands in the snow and another stands in the rain. Weather created this way doesn't have a turn limit and will even change if Minecraft's weather changes. If you use your own weather move to change the weather in battle, it also replaces the weather the battle starts with. There is also a config option for allowing the weather to change midway through battle. Weather won't be created if you are in the Nether, in the End, in the Drowned World, indoors, underground, or underwater. And that all makes sense because these are all natural types of weather which don't really affect you indoors or underground. And by default, this will only affect wild Pokemon battles and trainer battles, though there are of course config options to turn it off for those, and config options to turn it on for raid battles and PvP battles. The run attack animation that existed in 1.12 was finally ported over to 1.16. This affects 37 moves in total, and some of those moves are Tackle, Quick Attack, and Extreme Speed. And this is just a nice step towards more animated battles. The Pokemon that is attacking moves toward the defending Pokemon and even knocks back the defending Pokemon. Different moves can start off moving faster earlier on and have different maximum velocities. And the amount of damage you do affects how far the defending Pokemon is knocked back. So you can see that Quick Attack starts off moving faster than Tackle, and Extreme Speed immediately moves faster than both of them. And hitting a Rock and Roll off the top of a spire in the Ultra Plant biome sends it to oblivion. But we are not done with battles yet. Everyone has experienced flying on a Pokemon and trying to start a battle with another flying Pokemon, or having one attack you, and you are knocked off your Pokemon. That will happen no longer, as you can now battle while riding on a Pokemon, even while flying. What this means is if you're riding a Pokemon and an Ekans attacks you for the 1,000,000th time, you can stay on top of your Swampert while making sure that Ekans never messes with you again. If you are flying in the air, you will stay mounted on your Pokemon during the battle. And if the Pokemon you are flying on is the one fighting, it will zoom around with you on it. If you switch to another Pokemon, you will stay on your mount. And while the Pokemon you are riding is not fighting, it will stay suspended in the air, while the other Pokemon will gracefully float up and down in the air. And as I alluded to previously, to make it actually look like the Pokemon attack each other, they will zoom towards each other instead of bouncing back and forth like Pokemon do on the ground. Though be careful, because if the Pokemon you are riding does faint during the battle, you will still fall off it. That's on you. Now, on to all the new Pokemon, moves, items, abilities, and palettes in this update. Plus more gyms. There is a lot in this update. The new moves added from Gen 9 are Chilling Water, Chilly Reception, Pounce, Snowscape, and Trailblaze. The addition of Snowscape also means that Snow has been added as a weather type, which you saw earlier, and because of that, the Snow Warning ability has been changed to use Snow instead of Hail. The new items added in this update are the Blink Plate, which is obtainable in Village Temples, Pillager Outposts, Ultra Space, and from Legendary bosses. The Booster Energy, obtainable from Ultimate Boss Drops, Pokéchests, and as a held item from Paradox Pokemon. The Leader's Crest, which has a small chance to be held by Bisharp. The Legend Plate, which Arceus can now be holding when he spawns. The Loaded Dice, which can be found on uncommon bosses and in shops. The Mirror Herb, which can mainly be found by foraging. The Punching Glove, which can be found in Village Tannery shops, on bosses, and on punching themed Pokemon such as Hitmonchan and Carbrawler. And the Sweetheart item. The Sweetheart is the only one of these with a crafting recipe and can heal your Pokemon for 20 HP. It should also be noted that since the blank plate was added, the Archalice will now require the blank plate along with the rest of the type plates in order to spawn Arceus. And that brings us to the new Pokemon of this update. First up, we have Tandemaus and Maushold, which are found indoors in plains and forest biomes. Next, Charcadet, Armarouge, and Ceruledge have been added. They all spawn in mesas, volcanoes, and volcanic plains. However, Armarouge will only spawn during the day, and Ceruledge only during the night. Charcadet can also spawn in groups. Varoom, Reveroom are now in Pixelmon and can be found in mesa biomes during the day. Tinkatink, Tinkatuff, and Tinkaton have been added. You can find them in mountainous forests and redwoods during the day. Cyclizar is finally in Pixelmon and will spawn in savannas and arid biomes during the day. Greavard and Houndstone are two spooky additions to this update, and you'll find them in freezing biomes at night. Veluza is new too and will spawn and can also be fished in oceans, lukewarm oceans, warm oceans, and all the deep versions of those oceans. Next up, Dondozo and Tatsugiri. They can both be found in rivers and lakes during the day and will spawn or can be caught via fishing. Dondozo will also spawn in swamp biomes. Annihilape has also been added. It will spawn in jungles, the Ultra Jungle, and crag gardens at night. The Dunsparce is also new. You can find it underground and also in arid biomes and the Ultra Desert at night. I'm sure lots of you will be excited to see Kingambit is also new to this update. It will spawn in lakes, river biomes, in bamboo jungles, and Ultra Deep Sea at night. It also has a chance to spawn with a group of Bisharp around it. Screamtail, one of the Paradox Pokemon, is also new and can now be found in small end islands. There are a bunch of new sounds for Pokemon that have been added, and the Hospitality, Mind's Eye, Super Sweet Syrup, and Toxic Chain ability have been added. These are abilities from Pokemon in the Scarlet and Violet Teal Mask DLC, and while the data from these Pokemon have been added to the game, they do not currently spawn in the world and are only available in sprite mode. Moving on to palettes, there are new jump palettes for Gyarados, Gastrodon, and Graplocked. Alright, so quick note, if you don't know what Pokemon Jump is or never seen jump palettes before, Pokemon Magikarp Jump was a mobile game made where the goal was to jump as high as possible with a Magikarp, and you could use Magikarp with different patterns. You can catch all those different Magikarp in Pixelmon using an old, good, or Super Rod, plus a bunch of other Pokemon the same way. Before this update, Magikarp, Shellos, and Clobbopus would lose their special palettes if you evolved them simply because those palettes didn't exist for their evolved form. Now, thanks to the work of the artist Masked Flare, your Magikarp, Shellos, and Clobbopus can be evolved to get the same cool palettes on their evolved forms. However, don't try this with your jump palettes, Spheal, or Slugma, as their evolved forms do not have the jump palettes. And just take a look at how cool these palettes are. I don't think anybody is using Magikarp on their team, so it's nice that your hard work catching these Pokemon can translate to cool palettes on Pokemon like Gyarados, which is definitely a Pokemon people use. I mean, you now have over 30 palettes on Gyarados alone, and all sorts of pinks, oranges, grays, blues, and even purples. The palettes for both of Shellos forms, the East form and the West form, now exist as options for both of Gastrodon's forms. And Clobbopus' evolved form, Graplocked, has all the playing card themed palettes and the alien palettes too. It is October, so this update contains some Halloween related stuff. The Pokéstops have a witch hat placed atop them, and you will find new witch palettes of Shuppet and Banette, Mischievous and Mismagius, Hisuian Zorua and Hisuian Zoroark, Tinkatink, Tinkatuff, and Tinkaton, and last but not least, Greavard and Houndstone. The witch version of these Pokemon will spawn around the cute new pumpkin house structure, which you can find in plains biomes. For those of you in the Pixelmon Discord, you also receive the neat looking witch hat cosmetic, available to you from Pixelmon's cosmetics menu. And finally, the last major new feature of this update, the Steel Gym Town and the Ice Gym Town. The Steel Gym Town is this densely packed, industrial age looking factory town where of course the factory is the Steel Gym. It's made up of brick and stone, covered with actual lamps and paved with cobbled streets. You'll find that it spawns in savanna biomes and has the typical trappings of a Minecraft village, one of them being the church, which has been turned into this huge, very Anglican looking church. We also have the buildings that Pixelmon adds to villages such as the daycare, Pokemart, and Pokecenter. And there are just so many small details that have been added. The church has a organ up top. We have little hedged-in gardens that the citizens can enjoy. We even have playgrounds for kids, and one of these buildings has a water wheel. Inside many of these buildings are rooms furnished for the NPCs. The Pokemart and Pokecenter look like they belong in a big city, with the Pokecenter appearing much more like a full hospital. And we even have small cafes, a daycare that blends in with the city, Melmetal statues to fit the Steel Gym theme, and the TCG shop actually has its own building now. If you look, you'll see that there is an arena to play the Pokemon TCG in the back of the shop. You can really tell that a lot of thought was put into this. The Steel Gym itself is a massive factory with a forklift and tons of industrial equipment that I do not know the names of. There are actual fires and magma and lava that are part of the build. Elevator blocks are used. There is a smokestack that has smoke coming out of it. And this minecart track leads up into this tower that actually has a minecart that goes around it. The Steel Gym leader, of course, has a full team of 6 Pokemon, and defeating them will give a Steel Gym badge. There are 6 different teams the gym leader can have, so if you find multiple villages, you can try your hand at different teams. The Ice Gym Town is very different than the Steel Gym Town. Located in the snowy tundra biome, it is built up with many different types of ice, and the buildings are placed farther apart. Snow is always covering the buildings and landscape, and you'll find columns of ice everywhere. We have our Pokemon Center, which is cozier and has a small library in it. The Pokemart is, of course, here, along with a daycare center. The Ice Gym Town has a blacksmith and lots of small little houses with smoke rising out of their chimneys. The Minecraft temple is replaced by this very cool but small church that uses end rods on the inside to light it up instead of the lanterns that other buildings use. The Ice Gym almost looks like a giant iceberg, except it's been hollowed out and built around, so that you have to start from the bottom and work your way to the top. There are some soul lanterns and sea lanterns to light your way in the dark, and blue and green covered leaves make up some of the trees as if the branches have been frozen over. The gym leader has a full team of 6 Pokemon, and upon defeating them, you'll receive an ice badge. And that concludes all the new features of this update. The bug fixes that I think are important to know about are that the bug with breeding for Paldean Wooper has been fixed, along with a bunch of breeding bugs related to hidden abilities. Cloning machines will now drop themselves when broken instead of just ingots. The starter Pokemon you can choose can now be any size instead of always being the small growth size. An instance where Lunala or Solgaleo could be deleted after the Dusk or Dawn variant of Necrozma Infused was fixed. The Netherite Hammer will no longer be incredibly slow. You can once again obtain Magmar with the palette styled after Slugma's Jump palettes by evolving a Magby with a Jump palette Slugma. The Smelt external move works on Smokers and Blast Furnaces now. And lastly, Pokeballs that change a Pokemon's palette, such as the Christmas Ball, have been fixed so that they also work in max raid dens. So that is everything. That is everything you need to know about 9.18 and 9.19 version of Pixelmon. Do enjoy the update, have fun, please remember to like and subscribe, and see you next time.